I will always hate those guys for what they did to me, so they follow me around. All of Hollywood was shocked when word got out on October 11th that Diane Keaton had died alone and tragically. But what shocked people even more was the famous actress's last notebook entry, in which she named the 5 men who hurt her and broke her heart, and who also changed her in some way. Keaton could never forgive these guys, those who had abused and put her down directly. How many names did Diane Keaton hate for the rest of her life? Was it treason, power, or a quiet fight? Let's look at this movie and find the list of 5 names. Francis Ford Coppola was the one who always yelled at Keaton. Diane Keaton entered a world in 1970 that she was not at all ready for. What K? It hit her like lightning when Adam's Corleo showed up in The Godfather. It was both the best chance of her young career and a quiet nightmare. She once told Fox News that she was scared when she got the part because she didn't understand why Francis Ford Coppola would trust an actress who hadn't even read Mario Puzo's book or seen a full script before the tryout. Keaton thought she was good at playing silly, funny parts, so playing Kay, who was serious and complicated, was very different from what she was used to doing. Why me? She asked herself as she stood in front of the mirror in her dressing room. The mood on set was as tense as a wire. Everything was run with the precision of a strategist by Coppola, the bright but distant director. With her messy brown hair and unsure smile, Keaton could tell that they were far away. There were no friendly chats or backpats to make them feel better. After some time, she remembered that they were not friends with Paulie. Coppola only spoke when he wasn't happy. His voice was short and sharp, and all he said was, "Try this." Those harsh instructions made Keaton feel even more lost, and she was already feeling uncertain. She whispered to herself, "I don't belong here." The cold days of filming in New York made Keaton feel even more alone. Even though Al Pacino and James Caan had strong dramatic scenes, her character Kay seemed to be pushed to the background. She didn't have much screen time because she was Michael Corleone's kind and faithful wife. Keaton felt ignored, but she never said it out loud. Coppola wanted The Godfather to be a story about guys, gangsters, smoke, and blood, she had heard. It started to bother her when she suggested giving Kay more emotional depth, but Coppola just shook his head and said, "Just do it my way." She felt let down by both her part and the way he favored the male characters. Keaton often talked about how alone and scared she felt while shooting The Godfather. She remembered a scene from Partel and 2 where Coppola made her do a take over and over again, telling her feelings weren't strong enough. As an actor who liked to improvise and be emotionally open, Keaton felt stifled by his strict control. Keaton was a well-known star by the time of The Godfather Part 3, but Coppola's way of working hadn't changed. Accounts from behind the scenes show that he was still very strict about how she played Kay, who had become more independent and bold by that time. One source said that Coppola told her that her act was too strange for the movie's mood, which hurt Keaton a lot, as she talked about how hard it was to connect with his vision, because she felt like Coppola didn't trust her acting skills. When she found out he had never told her why he picked her in the first place, things got even worse between them. After many years, Coppola finally told her he thought she was more than just the stereotypical wife. He said he found her deeper, funny, and more interesting. She never felt that trust on the set, though. She felt like an unfinished puzzle piece in his big picture. During one break, she heard Coppola and Pacino talking about how important Michael was, but they didn't say a word about Kay. That moment cut her pride like a knife. The way Keaton felt about Coppola wasn't mean. She agreed that he was a nice guy, a genius, and had amazing vision. But that act of kindness didn't make me feel better about how unappreciated I felt. A friend of hers heard her say that working for Coppa was like walking on a tightrope, always afraid that someone will catch you if you fall. That fear was already there. Keaton always got nervous when she started a new project and asked herself, "Can I really do this?" But with The Godfather, the pressure of a demanding director and a story that didn't seem to be written for her made her nervous even more. It has been said for a long time that there was a late night on set in Hollywood. Keaton tried to talk to Coppola about Kay's character, even though he was tired from a long shoot, hoping that he would listen. But he was too busy with technical details to pay attention. so he just nodded and walked away. Keaton felt like he wasn't seen in that brief moment. An artist who isn't there. She never talked about it again, but she told herself that no one would ever make her feel that small again. After some time had passed, Keaton understood that she wasn't just mad at Coppola, but at the whole Hollywood system. It left women, especially those over 40, out in the cold a lot of the time. Even though playing Kay was a big part of Keaton's work, it was always seen as a sign of silent sacrifice, which she hated both on screen and in real life. She once said in an interview, "Men get to do the interesting things. Women are the boring ones." With Coppola, she held no personal grudge, but she could never forgive how he perhaps unintentionally reinforced that dynamic in The Godfather. What do you think about Coppola's working style? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Now let's move on to another name, a man Diane both loved and hated. Warren Beatty, the lover she also hated the most. After The Godfather, Diane Keaton stepped out of Kay Corleone's shadow, with a fierce desire to prove she was not just a director's muse, but an artist with her own voice. When Red's 1981 came along, it felt like a tidal wave she couldn't resist. The epic film, directed, produced, co-written, and headlined by Warren Beatty, became a universe where art, ideals, and egos collided endlessly. In it, Keaton portrayed Louise Bryant, a journalist and feminist activist, swept up in the storm of revolution and love. The role earned her an Oscar nomination. But behind that shining success were months of tension, exhaustion, and inner conflict between love and self-determination. From the first camera test, Keaton sensed Beatty's magnetic pull. He entered the set like a center of gravity, and everyone seemed to orbit him. Warren always knew what he wanted, she recalled with a hint of bitterness. The problem was he also believed he knew what everyone else needed. That remark, subtle yet sharp, revealed the duality of admiration and fatigue she endured throughout the shoot. Beatty's working style was a mix of genius and obsession. He could demand retakes 20, even 100 times simply because Keaton's eyes didn't match the emotional rhythm he envisioned. "Let's do it again," he would say, calm yet absolute. After the 30th take, Diane would stay silent, swallowing her frustration to preserve the moment's authenticity. "I understood his pursuit of perfection," she admitted. But sometimes that perfection kills the soul of the moment. Once during a long dialogue scene, Beatty suddenly stopped her midline to adjust the position of her hand. Diane paused, looked at him for a few seconds, and softly asked, "Do you want me to be Louise or just the shadow in your imagination?" The set fell silent. Beatty said nothing, merely signaled to roll again. As the camera started, Keaton felt both defeated and victorious. Defeated by his control, but victorious for daring to reclaim her space. Their relationship burned with both passion and cracks. "We loved each other when the camera stopped and argued when they started." Keaton once said that love resembled Red's itself, grand, intense, and exhausting. While Beatty reveled in his role as the leader, Diane began to feel pushed to the sidelines, like a satellite spinning beyond her control. One cold night after a long day's shoot, Keaton approached Beatty. "Do you ever think this film isn't just yours?" Beatty looked up and smiled, the smile of a man who always thought he was right. "Of course it's yours too," he said, "but I have to keep it on course." Diane didn't say anything, and she realized that under the dim studio lights that their once passionate love was slowly turning into a battle of egos. They were together from 1978 to 1983, years of both passion and pain. Some rumors said Beatty proposed to her, but Keaton refused, unwilling to give up her freedom. After that, he became more distant and demanding on set. "I think he couldn't stand not being able to control me," she joked, half-jokingly. Whatever the truth, their relationship left a lasting scar in Keaton's artistic life, a place where love and power became impossible to tell apart. The old magic was gone when they got back together years later for Town and Country. The movie was a huge failure, just like their relationship. It was long past its prime. Keaton was polite and kept quiet, but everyone could see the space between them. One thing that was left was respect, not emotion. In a later statement, she said that he had always wanted to be in charge of everything. "I learned that no one can control art or another person's heart." After many years, Batty hugged her on stage at the 2017 AFI Awards and said, "She's the most interesting story I've ever had." She smiled, and her eyes were warm but far away. That moment ended their long-running disagreement not by forgiving each other, but by bringing them peace. Keaton didn't really hate Batty in the end. He only felt bad that they could never live together in the same world, since he needed to be in charge and she just wanted to be free. Chevy Chase was another man Keaton hated almost as much. 3. The mean guy on set. Chevy Chase. Diane Keaton was already a Hollywood star in the early 1990s. A woman with a unique ease in a world full of light and noise. She wanted to do something fun and light after years of playing serious parts. It would be a breath of fresh air after a string of serious movies. The 1992 book Memoirs of an Invisible Man came at the perfect time. Chevy Chase stars in this comedy with science fiction elements. It was directed by John Carpenter. Keaton thought the trip would be fun, but she was wrong. Keaton played Alice Munro in the movie. Munro is a smart and kind woman who falls in love with a man who disappears. It sounded interesting on paper. Love and magic, fun and people. Diane thought something was wrong from the first days she was on set, though. Not because of the story, but because Chevy Chase was in it with her. Chevy was one of the biggest comedy stars in America in the 1980s. He was known for making up jokes on the spot, loving being the center of attention all the time, and improvising a lot. However, by the early 1990s, he was not as well known, and his strange behavior became more clear. Diane was a disciplined actress who put a lot of value on planning. Suddenly, she was stuck in a career nightmare. He was late almost every morning, a team member remembered. Diane always got there early and read her script while sitting still. One afternoon, Chase suddenly broke the mood with an imagined sneeze and burst out laughing. Alice was supposed to tell the man she couldn't see how much she loved him. There was silence on the set. Keaton stood still with her eyes closed, trying to hold on to the last bit of feeling she had. I think she wanted to cry or leave at that point. Someone who works with lights recalled. Diane later said in an interview, "There are times when you realize that not everyone loves movies the way you do." They were still angry with each other. Chase, who liked to make things up on the spot and be the center of attention, changed his lines a lot during shots, which threw Diane off. She told him softly, "Chevy, if you're going to change lines, at least let me know so I can keep up with the scene." He laughed and leaned back in his chair. "Diane, it's just a joke. Take a deep breath. The real feelings happen when you least expect them," she said in a soft but strong voice. "Not being careful is what scares me," she said. The air between them became cold after that. They had to stop filming several times to calm down during their scenes together because things were getting too heated. Keaton tried to look professional, but she was clearly tired. During that time, she kept a private journal and later said in an interview, "Sometimes I feel like I'm acting with a child, one who doesn't realize everyone else is trying to keep the film from falling apart." A member of the crew said that Chase joked, "You act great, but if you stay this uptight, no one's ever going to want to kiss you." To Chase, this may have been a joke, but it hit Keaton like a slap. She didn't answer. She just got up and left without looking back. The next day, she showed up on time, did a great job on every scene, but she only said what was written in the script to her co-star. After that, everyone on set understood in silence. It was over for the partnership. The movie got bad reviews and didn't do well at the box office when it came out. The movie's effects and plot were criticized, but Keaton didn't say anything. When asked about the process of making it, she smiled and said that Keaton found it very hard. Memoirs of an Invisible Man wasn't just a bad movie. It was a bad lesson in how to treat others. After that, she turned down many job offers when she felt like the workplace was bad for her. "Getting ahead doesn't matter to me," it was once said. "What I need is to work with people who see filmmaking as a serious journey, not a playground for their egos." Besides Chevy Chase, Keaton hated hearing another name over and over again. Michael Douglas was that person. 4. Director Joel Schumacher, who was hard to work with and made her feel lost. The year 1995 was a big year for superhero movies in Hollywood. Studios were rushing to make the next big hit, And Batman Forever by Joel Schumacher was thought to change the story of Batman. When the project started, Diane Keaton, who was already a smart and beautiful movie star, took on the part more out of interest than excitement. She wanted to try something new, bright, grand, sparkling, and full of young energy, after years of intense emotional dramas. She had no idea that this trip would be one of the most confusing things she had ever done in her life. Keaton knew she was in a strange world from the very first day she arrived on set. The Gotham sets were lit up with neon lights. Giant wind machines roared like fake storms, and outfits made of metal sparkled. Wearing a white leather jacket and mirrored sunglasses, director Joel Schumacher was the epitome of 1990s Hollywood excess. He was bold, sure of himself, and more interested in showmanship than in soul. Keaton was a true minimalist who values truth and subtlety. She felt like she had woken up in a movie dream where everything was too bright to be real. In the story, she played Dr. Chase Meridian, a psychologist who was smart, mysterious, and attractive. But as she read more, it became clear that the part wasn't meant to be psychologically deep. It was just there to show off Batman's glory. People could watch, be interested in, and want her identity. Keaton tried to give the part some meaning by making it a little more vulnerable and thinking about the darker side of people. All of that, though, was overwhelmed by Schumacher's love of glitz. The director didn't like her stops, which were times when her character didn't say anything but thought. He asked her to move around more, smile bigger, and look sexy. Demands that went against everything Keaton felt like an actor. She had to reshoot scenes every time she tried something new, sometimes just because her look wasn't Hollywood enough. Keaton felt like she wasn't seen anymore as they worked. She had worked with directors like Coppola, Batty, and Allen before, and they all trusted her creative abilities. Everything was planned ahead of time here. The color of her makeup, the way she stood, and even the way she looked at me. During a very long 14-hour day, Keaton had to film a scene in which Chase stood far away and watched Batman. A simple moment that happened more than 10 times because Schumacher didn't like the way the light was reflecting. He stood in the middle of the set and yelled over the loud fans, "More! Brighter! Bigger!" Keaton looked around and saw the tired crew quietly switching film reels. The blue and purple light made their faces look tired. She saw that she was in the middle of a huge movie show. Everything was set up to be a show, and she was just a prop. Val Kilmer, who played Batman with her, didn't help. Kilmer kept his emotions in check because he was known for being cold and hard to get along with. Keaton tried to make Kilmer feel more human in their romantic scenes, but he stayed stiff and cold, as if he were playing with his mask on instead of his heart. She felt even more alone because they didn't have chemistry. There were rumors that Schumacher spent more time working on Batman's look than talking to his main lady. "I got it, Keaton. Male power was the most important thing in this world. It was the center of everything else." She went back to her changing room many times in anger. She asked herself if she was making the same mistake that other veterans had, which was taking on a job because it looked good, instead of because it had heart. One night, she looked in the mirror and almost didn't recognize the face that was so heavily made up. She thought, "This isn't me. It's a fake version of me made for a world I don't fit in." The mood on set became more and more stuffy. Schumacher was naturally impulsive, and he didn't try to hide how annoyed he was when Keaton suggested making even small changes to the script. Some team members remembered times when he was rude and said Keaton was too serious for a popcorn movie. She heard them but didn't say anything, so the cut got worse. For her, the words themselves weren't what made them offensive. It was when she lost the freedom to be artistic, which she saw as the essence of acting. Even so, she finished the part with quiet efficiency, like a soldier in a quiet war. When Batman Forever came out, it did very well at the box office. But for Keaton, it was a victory of light, not soul. She didn't go to many promotional events. She only showed up at the premiere where she smiled nicely but looked away. When asked about it, she just said, "It wasn't for me." After that, Keaton pulled back and avoided loud business projects for a while. Her days were spent writing, drawing, taking pictures, and getting to know herself again. People saw a new Diane Keaton in movies like Something's Gotta Give and The Family Stone. She was sure of herself, beautiful, and in charge of her own life. She stopped trying to fit in with made-up worlds. She had learned that the brightest light doesn't come from studio lamps, but from having a strong sense of self-respect. 5. Michael Douglas, the cold co-star who brought Keaton pain. As a dark spoof on marriage, The War of the Roses came out in 1989. Diane Keaton, on the other hand, felt tired, hurt, and like she was living in two different places at the same time. The world of feelings and the world of power. Keaton was at the top of her game after the huge hits of Reds and Baby Boom. She was determined to show that she wasn't just Woody Allen's smart inspiration, but also a real actor who could get to the heart of complicated characters. She liked the irony in the plot for The War of the Roses when she got it. A marriage that is falling apart because love turns into hate, and the desire to hurt others takes the place of being polite. She had no idea, though, that the movie would turn into a real war, not only on screen but also off-screen. Michael Douglas, who played her co-star, came into the show still full of the energy of Wall Street. It seemed like the air around him got thicker when he walked in. He was sure of himself and had a cold confidence. Douglas was the type of actor who thought that truth was made by explosive force. Keaton thought that earnestness and subtlety were what art was all about. Both of them were pros, but from the start, their different ways of doing things made everything heavy. Douglas always showed up to work with a stressed face and eyes that looked at everyone as if he were getting ready for a mental battle. Keaton was naturally shy and quiet, but she felt like she had to play a game she didn't want to. Douglas was competitive in more ways than just his lines and ability. It seemed like he always had to prove he was smarter, bigger, or better in every way he looked and moved. Keaton, on the other hand, just wanted to play her part honestly, without having to measure or compare herself to anyone else. On set, the difference became clearer and clearer. When director Danny DeVito asked them to do over a tense fight scene between the roses, Douglas would often tell them to change how they moved or how intense they were being, sometimes in the middle of a take. That messed up Keaton's rhythm and emotional flow, and she is a very skilled performer. She tried to stay cool, but Douglas's cold, slightly smug look made her feel like she had lost an invisible race every time the camera stopped. The scene in the car was still one of her most tired memories. In this scene, Barbara wrecks the car her husband loves the most out of anger. Douglas insisted on several retakes because he wanted the scene to be very violent. Keaton put all of her emotional power into every act, and she quickly ran out of steam. After the 8th take, she was so tired that she could hardly breathe. Her hair was tangled with sweat, and her hands were shaking. Douglas did not offer support. Instead, he calmly offered a different approach. Perfectionism was what he saw it as. She thought it was mean. Keaton was hurt more by Douglas's behavior than by any judgment. She felt like he didn't care about her and used her to show off his skills. She would sit quietly in her dressing room during breaks and write in the small notebook she always had with her. He makes competition out of everything. I don't like to win. I only want to be honest in the part. It wasn't just being physically worn out. They were also spiritually suffocating. It was getting colder on set every day. Keaton stopped talking to Douglas and started focused only on her work. She got there on time, did her part perfectly, and left as soon as her scenes were over. No extra talking or hanging out with other people. They started calling her the Ice Queen, not because she wasn't nice, but because she was trying to keep herself safe from all the competition going on around her. In the last scene, when the two main characters are hanging from the huge chandelier, things finally broke. Setting it up was dangerous and needed perfect teamwork. When a problem with the rigging caused Keaton to hit her arm on a metal frame and hurt it, Douglas just smiled and said, "It's fine." He didn't say sorry or show worry. Keaton realized at that time that there was no longer a line between acting and real life. She wasn't any longer Barbara. She was Barbara, a woman who had to deal with a guy who didn't care about her after they had shared everything with each other. Everyone let out a sigh of relief when shooting was over. A lot of people liked The War of the Roses, $160 million at the box office, and a lot of praise for how realistically the actors played their parts. For Keaton, though, it was a painful but sweet wound. She didn't feel bad about making the movie, but she did feel like she had lost some faith in artists working together. Douglas never said sorry or brought up the strain again. That night they shook hands nicely, and Keaton's smile was so thin it was like a thread. Years later, when asked about the experience in an interview, she simply said, "Sometimes other people's intensity makes you lose your way. I learned not to let it consume me. It was neither blame nor forgiveness, just a gentle way to close a weary chapter." After the War of the Roses, Diane Keaton no longer accepted such brutally confrontational roles. She returned to gentler, warmer stories about independent, confident women who had nothing to prove to anyone. Perhaps that unscripted war in 1989 had taught her the true value of peace, something Hollywood, with all its glitz and noise, rarely offers a woman like her. In the end, Diane Keaton passed away on October 11, 2025, closing a career that spanned more than half a century. The journey of a woman who never bowed to conformity. When the news broke, Hollywood fell silent for hours. Generations of actors, directors, and writers paid tribute. Nancy Meyers, who had worked with Keaton on Something's Got to Give, wrote, "She was one of a kind, a free soul, strong and gentle at the same time." Keaton's passing came suddenly, but her legacy burned brightly, not only in cinema, but in the way a woman can live fully as herself. Born in 1946 in Los Angeles, Diane Keaton grew up in an art-loving family. She showed an early passion for acting and studied at the neighborhood playhouse in New York. From the Broadway stage, she moved to the big screen in the 1970s, quickly becoming one of the defining faces of her era. The Godfather made her an icon, while Annie Hall brought her to the top with an Oscar. Yet behind the glitter of fame, Keaton always kept a quiet modesty, an intelligent, sensitive woman who saw the world through the lens of sincerity. In a Hollywood obsessed with glamour, Diane Keaton chose to stand apart. She refused plastic surgery, refused formulaic roles, and never feared showing her quirks. With her signature fedora hat, oversized suits, and charmingly clumsy grace, she became an accidental fashion icon. But more than a style, it was a philosophy. You don't have to be beautiful by other standards. You just have to be honest with yourself. Throughout her career, Keaton was more than an actress. She was a director, producer, photographer, and storyteller. She directed documentaries, wrote books on lifestyle, and loved home restoration, a hobby she called the art of silence. Her Brentwood home, the house that Pinterest built, stood as proof of her creative spirit, elegant, rustic, and full of character. Just days before her death, she withdrew the house from the market, as if she knew she wanted to rest in the space she had poured her soul into. Her other great love was people. Though she never married, she adopted 2 children, Dexter and Duke, whom she always called the greatest achievement of my life. In her later years, she slowed down, spending time photographing, journaling, and tending her small garden in Los Angeles. Friends said she still sent funny messages, still joked about herself. Still Diane Keaton, witty, warm, and a little awkward as ever. Her passing left many feeling hollow. Hollywood lost an icon, but more deeply the world lost a rare voice, one of freedom and honesty. Nancy Meyers, Al Pacino, and many former co-stars all said that what made Keaton special wasn't fame, but the way she made others feel seen and heard. She didn't just act. She lived every moment of the art itself. Diane Keaton left behind 3 unfinished projects, films she had hoped would serve as her farewell to audiences. Yet even without them, her legacy was already too vast to measure. Her roles, from Kay Adams to Annie Hall, from Erica Barry to Sybil Stone, all portrayed women who were complex, intelligent, and deeply human. Through them, she told her own story, that of a woman who dared to love, to err, and to be different. Perhaps that's how Diane Keaton wanted to be remembered. Not as a Hollywood legend, but as an ordinary woman who lived truthfully to the end. Now the lights are out, the cameras have stopped, but that smile, that husky, witty voice still linger in every frame. And in the hearts of those who love cinema, Diane Keaton will forever remain the symbol of grace, independence, and authenticity. The woman who made the world warmer simply by being herself. Looking back on her long, turbulent journey, Diane Keaton once admitted that what made her stronger wasn't the perfect roles. It was the stormy collaborations. The 5 men who once unsettled her through toughness, arrogance, or carelessness unintentionally became mirrors through which she came to understand herself. Every film, every clash was a lesson in preserving identity amid Hollywood's towering egos. She once said, "No one ever truly made me regret anything, only experiences that made me more awake to who I am." Today, as the stage lights dim, Keaton can smile at her past with gratitude. Because without those trials, she might never have become the strong, deep, and graceful woman she was. And what about you? Do you think Diane Keaton regretted the collaborators who once made her uncomfortable? Or did they, in their own way, help shape the legend she became? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love behind-the-scenes Hollywood stories like this one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next.